day 464. And we're about to get started with some mobility. I'm going to have a cup of coffee, and then I'm going to go out for a walk. So if you want to join me for a cup of coffee, a chat about health and fitness, and then a mobility session, you're in the right place. It seems like sound's working, and as you can see, I am back in my shorts and my workout gear. And I'm starting to feel much better, but we're still going to take it easy, which means we're not going to be training under load. We are just going to be working out. For those of you doing a mobility routine, for those of you who are watching, my name is Toby. I am 41 years old, and I train to live an active, self-sufficient, and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep, minding what I eat, showing up and doing training, strength and conditioning, mobility, and by generally spending time with people I love and care about, doing things that I enjoy, and generally living a stress-free life if I have the opportunity. This is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. I would like to feel fit, capable, and competent for life. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The main two reasons are this. As a father of two young children, I want to be an active part of their life. I want to be able to play on the floor with them. I want to be able to run after them. I want to be able to climb after them. I want to be able to keep up with them in their sports activities, not only now for fun and play, but also in general to set a good example for them and to show them what an active life actually is and what an active and healthy adult actually is and acts and behaves like. And the second thing is that I know life expectancy has increased, but the number of years that we are ill at the end of our life has increased with it. So we get to live longer, it's good news, but we get to live longer with discomfort and disease. Not so good news. And some of those diseases and discomforts, not all, and I'll give a bit of nuance later on when having coffee, can be mitigated and prevented through lifestyle choices. So in the future, I hope through my lifestyle choices, training, exercise, and activity, I will stay fitter and healthier for longer, and I'm quite interested in what that means for sleep, what that means for food, what that means for training, what that means for social connections, and how to bring that all together. And those are the things that we generally talk about on the channel. In the immediate future, so today, tomorrow, actually having all of that extra energy, being capable, is just generally useful when I have to carry the family suitcases through an airport, lift the groceries, move around, run around, be fast, be busy, and get things done. Being generally fit and healthy is helpful. So it helps both long term and short term for me. What I try to do every day is, first and foremost, wake up and do a workout. This morning it's a mobility routine and a walk because I'm still recovering from a back injury from a lift gone wrong, and that's just going to take its time and need its time to recover, but that is completely fine. And then throughout the day I try to be mindful of what I eat, and I try to eat within my energy balance, and I try to be active, taking the stairs, going out for walks, moving around, rather than sitting for 8 hours in a day. So I try to get about 3 hours of movement in throughout the day, 3 hours of activity in various modalities, whether it's exercise, walking stairs, picking up stuff, carrying it around, doing some squats, doing some pull-ups, anything that you can think of. Then I mind my sleep. So I have a time that I wake up, which is around 5, and I try to go to bed 8 hours before so that I hit that 7 to 9 hour window nearly every day. And that seems to be working out just fine. While we do the workout or the mobility routine, we talk about health and fitness, longevity. If you have any questions, you go ahead and let me know in the chat. Happy to chat with you. This, I think it's Friday night where you might be at, Saturday morning where I'm at. Remember, friend, we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. This person we are today is going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. And the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So I suggest we just get started. I did some foam rolling last night, so loosening up my legs, shins, hamstrings. Need to start adding the quads to that routine. But in general, I'd say that is going in the right direction, and that has a lot to do with the fact that I need to loosen and limber up to drive some changes in my structure at the top. We'll talk a bit more about that when I'm able to do that, but the long story short is that my right shoulder keeps getting irritated. And the reason for that apparently is that my shoulder blade isn't moving entirely the way it should. Now, for general life, I could go through life without experiencing too much hindrance for this. But as we want to lift up kettlebells, and with those kettlebells work overhead as well as in swings, as well as lifting them from the ground, it is important to examine mobility and look at or work with my shoulder to help it move better. So that's one of the things that I'm working on this year. I'm still trying to decide which aspect of knowledge I want to improve upon first for longevity. Last year we did functional movement and health coaching, which was such a good training course that it did change my entire perspective on my approach to health and fitness. I also got my kettlebell certifications and did a couple of kettlebell courses to learn how to swing and lift properly. That's completely fine. But maybe this year I want to invest and learn more, for example, about sleep. Or about nutrition, and trying to decide what would be a good investment of my time, because sleep, I guess, might be the most straightforward. My understanding and my limited knowledge, I would estimate there are only so many ways to actually sleep well, so many ways to actually manage overall sleep hygiene. Whereas with nutrition, you can get into a lot of different modalities, right? Are we eating for a specific sport or a specific goal? Are we eating to lose weight? Are we eating to gain weight? Are we eating to gain muscle? Are we eating to lose fat and gain muscle? Are we eating to ward off or fight certain diseases? Because we need to. Are we eating in combination with a medical treatment to support ourselves? Are we feeding a top athlete? Are we feeding an amateur athlete? Are we fueling a day at the office? I think there are a lot more modalities and ways to look at life and nutrition than there are to look at life and good sleep. So probably there's a lot more to learn about nutrition. And then what is that first step? Right? Which aspect of that am I most interested in covering? Whereas sleep probably is just about sleep. So there you have some of the things that are top of mind for me that I'm concerned about, that I would be thinking about this early in the morning while we're doing a routine before going on a morning walk. I'm trying to build in a workout and then some time outside for the foreseeable future. And then I hope that that will last from summer into winter. But hey, let's see. By the way, if you're into chat and watching, hit like, leave a comment, just let me know you're there. If you have a question about health, fitness, longevity, recovering from a back injury, you go ahead, let me know. We can talk about that. In general, we're just going to talk about health and fitness and the journey and what that means for life choices, because I think sometimes we still act, and I think it's a reflex in popular culture. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a reflex in popular culture to think of health and fitness and then think of exercise. Let's do some aerobics, let's go for a run, let's lift some weights, build some muscle. We think that top athletes, for example, super fit and super healthy, but they might be incredibly fit. I'm not convinced that that level of training does anything for your health, other than severely challenge your body's ability to grow and recover in light of a certain performance we're trying to set. And I think elite athletes have very different goals. We can learn something from them. But for people who have everyday careers, lead lives where they're not preparing for the next big achievement, but would like to be interested in staying fit and healthy for life, there's a lot to be said about just learning the basics of sleep, of nutrition, of movement, and of doing things in a social context, building those connections and contributing to communities as a whole. I think there's a lot to be said about that. Because we can take inspiration from our favorite athletes, but we need to keep in mind that they are training for the Olympics. They are competing against the best. They have the bandwidth to push themselves and then recover. And also have the specialized knowledge and guidance to help them do those things. Whereas if you are trying to get fit and healthy from your living room or kitchen, and you have to manage one or maybe two jobs in order to make ends meet, well, you would need to keep in mind that your goals are likely very different, and the amount of time and energy that you have to invest in health and fitness are probably going to be limited. So with the limited time that you have, what is going to give you the most bang for your buck, so to speak? What is going to let you do the things you want to accomplish in between breakfast, commute, work, and all of the other demands and commitments we have in life. Clause 22, hello. Thanks for dropping by and saying hi. And I appreciate you taking the time to let me know in the chat. And I hope you're doing well where you're at in the world, and that life is treating you well. This Friday night or Saturday morning, it's Saturday morning where I'm at, but it could be you're a couple of hours behind because I'm in Amsterdam. It's in European time zone. So in between all of our life's demands and commitments, the things that we are generally working on to keep life going, what are the things we can do that fit in that are going to help us get fitter and healthier, right? When we start to take a look at, or when we look at the challenge from that perspective, well, we're going to we are going to have a very different conversation about what health and fitness actually is. So I've walked you through my goals, but I'll reiterate them again. It is to be fit, competent, and capable for whatever life is going to throw at us. It is to be able to keep up with my children, whether they play on the floor or climbing through an indoor playground or want to do any kind of activity with me that would require physical capacity, some stamina, some strength, and some flexibility. All right? That is to set a good example for my children. It is to make lifestyle choices that will help me prevent certain diseases, discomforts, and challenges that we might face down the line because of the most prevalent lifestyle diseases, right? Being cancer, cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, and neurovascular diseases. So, worth looking into that. And then what are the key things that I can actually influence day to day? Well, the amount of sleep is a big one. The amount of sleep. I need to sleep every day, and it's the one thing we seem to take a bit for granted, if I'm very honest. Working on hip flexors and hip mobility here, by the way. We take that time that our body regenerates at night for granted. We think we can get away with less sleep than we actually can. And we should prioritize that, because that is the time that our body really recovers and really gets stronger and really improves and regenerates and heals itself. And there's not a lot we have to do for it, except in general mind the quality of our sleep by getting sufficient sleep, right? Between 7 and 9. Longer is better, up to a point. I think there is such a thing as too much sleep, but between 7 and 9 is a good starting point by trying to optimize the quality of sleep, having a dark room or a night mask, having peace and quiet at night, making sure that the room temperature is conducive to good sleep. You know, those hot, sticky nights that don't allow you to sleep. Whereas that nice, cool night is going to let you sleep just fine. So we have some challenges there, right? But those are relatively straightforward to solve. We can control a lot of those variables if we take the time and effort for it. And you want to know what the biggest change for me was? The biggest change for me was where I stopped watching series and playing video games at night. Because now suddenly there's a window of 3 hours. And those actually became 3 hours of extra sleep. Because I generally am tired. There might be 1 or 2 things that need to be done, like this foam rolling or something. But I've come, for example, to enjoy these morning walks in the forest. But also come to appreciate what actually sufficient sleep does for me. Now I can do more of the things that I want to do. I am fitter, sharper, more capable because of the state of restfulness and recharge that I experience day to day. So sleep is one, right? And I'm going to start off not with nutrition or training next, but we're going to look at connection and contribution, because we often forget that one. But when it comes to health, actually having people we love and care about, family, friends, having people who love and care about us is crucial to a long and healthy life. And I think we do easily sometimes forget that that truly needs to be a part of our conversation and our consideration in being healthy and fit is, are we connecting with people regularly? Are we connecting with people where we can relax, be ourselves, laugh, and joke? And I think the measure here for connection is when you spend time with someone. At the end of that, do you feel recharged and happy? Or do you feel depleted and tired? Was it an effort to participate and to be a part of the conversation? So this is the first. If you feel recharged, reinvigorated, and you are, tired but in a satisfactory way, that is probably a good thing. But if the interaction leaves you tired and worn out in a I should put it, in a depleted state, where you think, wish that was over an hour earlier, instead of, we could have kept talking all night and it would have been fine. There's a big difference there. But it's important, and sometimes it's important to participate socially, despite knowing that it might be somewhat tiring, wearing you out. For someone who wakes up at 5 a.m., for me, it is always a very conscious choice whether or not to go out for dinner or drinks with people, right? To socialize. Luckily, I'm also in the stage of my life where most people want to meet up for lunch throughout the afternoon, because we all have commitments early morning and early evening with our children. And then there's contribution, right? Because it's not just about nurturing close friendships and relationships. It's also about finding ways to participate in the communities that we're a part of. And when about the communities that we're a part of, if you work with colleagues, that is a community. It might not be the funnest community, right? I happen to work at a place where everyone gets along really well, where there's a good collaborative culture. I really appreciate all the support. Thank you very much. But that is still a community. So if you're thinking about communities, those are the kinds of things that we need to be mindful of. Roberto Contrales, hola. Espero que estás bien donde eres en el mundo. I hope you're fine in Chile, and that life is treating you well this Friday night or Saturday morning, depending on the time that is given there. As you can see, I'm doing a lot better, and I appreciate you dropping by and saying hi. So communities, right? Community is also the street that I live in, the neighbors checking in once in a while. There's a couple of neighbors. We go out for a drink every 3 to 6 months. We always make a little chat when we meet each other on the street. We're interested in each other's lives. They're interested in the kids, right? Those kinds of things. So community could also be my children's schools or sports clubs, right? So I offer to volunteer at sports events, or if there's something that needs to be done at school, can we in some way participate and help out? And those are things I think that we sometimes forget and take for granted, that also needs to happen, but we don't really make a plan for that. And yeah, thanks a lot. We're moving over to the kitchen, by the way, because that was the mobility routine, and we're now gonna grab the camera and set up here. Let's see, for a cup of coffee right before I go out on my work. And Roberto, have a great weekend as well. And I appreciate the compliment. Spanish is one of the languages that I would love to get back to learning and studying. When we have more time and bandwidth. I made very good friends from Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, while I was studying in Boston. And they inspired me to learn Spanish and to pick up that language. And I haven't used it in years, but it is one of those things that once the kids are a bit older and I will have some more bandwidth and time on my hands, I might add it as one of my pursuits, just like I have creative writing, because I would love to read Spanish literature. Apparently it's very beautiful when you read it and understand it in the Spanish language instead of the translations. Anyway, I digress. Although having hobbies and pursuits are important as well, right? We were talking about community and a sense of community, and it's important to realize and to keep in mind just how important that participation is. And if there isn't an in-person community, is there an online community like this one, right? Where we're on my channel talking about health and fitness. There's a huge community online, always has been, of people who are interested in health and fitness, and who actually want to learn and discuss and get more out of their day-to-day, and are looking for ways and insights to do that. So I'm always happy when people show up in chat, talk with each other and talk to me, in order to have that conversation. So community contribution, right? So we've done sleep, we've done community contribution, and let's talk about nutrition. And nutrition is another big one. And nutrition really follows function in general, right? There are different goals so that we can work towards, and different goals require different nutritional options. But as a general rule, nutrition is about quantity and quality. I think that's the easiest summary. So by quantity, I mean I have a certain energy balance in a day. There is a certain amount of Class 22, I'm glad to hear. Also someone from California signing in. And I appreciate to hear, I'm glad to hear that you're doing well over there. I'd love to visit California at some point in the future. Who knows um, what the future will bring. But when it comes to nutrition, right, we have different goals that we can eat towards, but the basics still remain the same: quantity and quality. When I say quantity, you can't escape the conversation about calories and about energy balance when it comes to nutrition. The fundamentals of how our body work haven't changed and are relatively straightforward, despite the fact that people would like us to believe otherwise. I have spent 25 years trying to figure this out, and I am so sad that I didn't figure this out when I was 16, 17, 18, but I only figured it out when I was 38, because that would have made my life a lot easier, especially my ability to stay healthy and fit. There's a certain amount of energy that we use throughout a day, and that is for our shape and size and body. I don't want to say relatively set, but probably doesn't fluctuate that much. Then there is an increase we can gain through, or decrease through muscle mass. More muscle mass, we use slightly more energy, but generally, the heavier we are, the more energy we require to maintain our system, right? So it goes hand in hand. Then there is the input, and the input is the amount, quantity of food that we consume. And the input really is key to be balancing that with the expenditure. Because if that is in balance, our weight will remain the same over time. And our body composition, depending on the stimulus we're able to provide regularly, will remain the same over time. If we eat less than we need, our body starts to provide fuel from its stores. We start to lose weight. If we eat more than we need, our body starts to store that excess fuel. There's no other way to get rid of it in our body, and we develop soft tissue fat. All right? Quantity. It's the basics. Then there's quality. There's the overall composition of our diet, the balance between macronutrients, how many micronutrients, fibers we're consuming. And maybe there's something to be said about meal timing afterwards, but quantity and quality doesn't have anything to do with meal timing. Even though meal timing sometimes is used as a way to influence quantity, and when we start to influence quantity, we tend to become more concerned with quality over time. I think this is always a funny interaction to observe, is the moment we start to be mindful of the calories we consume, we suddenly also start to care about where those calories are coming from. Okay? But important to keep this in mind in general. My quantity lies around 2200 calories. If I am just going to be sitting around and doing nothing, I should probably stick closer to around 2100 calories, just to be on the safe side of not exponentially increasing my weight over time. Because I'm relatively active, 2 to 3 hours a day of activity, there's probably a slight bump, but that bump is a lot smaller than we think. Even if our watch tells us after an hour run we've burned 500-600 calories more, I would not go out and flatly consume 600 calories more that day with the idea that I am then still losing weight. I don't think that calculation is entirely fair and representative of how that works, but generally a more active life is more demanding, so we can increase the quantity of food that we are consuming. Now, when it comes to quality, like I said, there's a balance we're trying to strike um, between our macronutrients. So we are trying to understand. We are trying to understand what it is that we are working towards. If we are trying to grow muscle, for example, more protein is important because it will help us with the process of muscle protein synthesis, of muscle growth. But if we're trying to maintain weight, we don't need as much protein as when we're trying to lose weight. And apparently, if we're trying to stay healthy over a longer period of time, the amount of protein can even be lower than we think. But again, it depends on your goals. Carbohydrates for fuel, healthy fats for fuel, to help manage hormonal processes. I think consuming fat is important with that also. The percentage of fat we have in our body helps with that. Right? So food quality becomes important. Just remember, when it comes to nutrition, quantity, then quality is the simplest way to start managing health. So how many calories are we consuming, and then where are those calories coming from in terms of protein, carbohydrates, fats, and fibers. And then we can start worrying about micronutrients and meal timing when we have quantity and quality under control. And then there is movement. And I tend to talk about movement rather than exercise, because exercise is a subpart of movement. But if we look at our day-to-day, we want to be active. We want to be moving around. We want to be walking. We want to be carrying things. We want to be lifting things. We want to be walking up and down stairs. Basically, we want at different times throughout the day to just increase our heart rate to 50, 60, 70% of what we're capable of, not just once but at regular intervals, to let our body know that we would like it to have the capacity to be able to do those things. Apart from training, because that is very specific, training could be, well, I would like to lift weights because I want to increase muscle mass, because I want to stay stronger over time. Okay, that's good. That is fighting deterioration in one way. I want to increase my VO2 max or my mitochondrial capacity through HIIT training, through high intensity training, or through steady state cardio and endurance. That's completely fine too, right? Because we need that kind of training and challenge as well. We could work on mobility through training to increase our range of motion. Those are very specific training modalities, very specific outcomes. But that does not offset a sedentary life that is devoid of movement. So the key is finding a way to do both, and to do both in a way that we enjoy. So I enjoy going out for walks. I do a workout, and then I will go out for a walk around the block, or I take an extra stroll around the block before I go to the train station for my commute. At work, I take the stairs. Every half an hour to an hour, the meeting switches. We have to go to different floors, so you quickly take the stairs up and down. If we go out, down and out for a walk around the block, I take the stairs there. I have a 3 kilo laptop bag with some other documents in it, weighted down with a book or two, that I walk. So I'm doing a weighted carry when I'm walking around, and I change hands regularly, just to challenge my core a little bit. Those kinds of little things matter and make a difference. Gardening is a good way. Walking to the supermarket, carrying groceries around, generally just lifting up stuff in and around the house is a good way to get that extra movement in. Right? And the combination of those factors, so sleep, nutrition, movement, connection, and contribution, or community, are the keys to living longer and healthier lives. How that works out for each of us individually, we need to figure that out as we go along. But putting time and effort into trying to figure out how that could work for us in our lives, I think is key. That's all I have for you this morning, friends. It is 6:10. I'm going to finish my coffee and I'm going to go out for a walk. For those of you who have been watching, my name is Toby. I'm 41 years old. I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. Do so by minding my sleep, minding what I eat, showing up for some movement and exercise, investing in my relationships and the communities that I'm a part of. This is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. I would like to feel fit, capable, and competent for life, not only today, but also as I age. The goal is to be working out and having these conversations with you when I turn 80, on whatever platform or format is around then. Thanks for watching. Thanks for dropping by. Remember, we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. This person we are today is going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. So a bit of kindness is going to go a long way. There are enough people out there who want to put us down so we can lift ourselves up. Roberto Gonzalez, Kloss22. I appreciate you dropping by in the chat. Thanks for saying hi. And remember, friends, the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So I will see you tomorrow. And remember, friends, subscribe.